Welcome back to the Reier on YouTube channel, where it is time once again for No Sleep TEAL, a program dedicated to discussion involving the National Football League's Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Reier back with you on Reier on YouTube, joined as always by my co-host, Evan Reier. The show brought to you by Party Girl Avondale, a food and gift experience in the Avondale section of Duval. And boy, Evan, before we jump in here, I'm going to give you some menu items that we're going to have at Party Girl this week. Party Girl menu for July 22nd through the 26th. There's going to be a bacon Swiss dip. There's going to be Brunswick stew. There's going to be Paw Paw's vegetable beef soup. There is going to be a BLT pasta salad. There is going to be D's skillet corn. You know what that is. You've had that a few
Absolutely, do.
times. Going to be twice baked potatoes, Ev, with maybe some barbecue chicken on some of those. German chocolate cupcakes, a Coca-Cola sheet cake, and some sour cream pound cake. Other than that, Ev, not a lot going on at Party Girl this week.
God dang, I have not eaten lunch, so that hurt. That hurt a lot. Wow, yeah, I definitely would be going for the skillet corn, twice baked potatoes. That's something that, that like asking my mom to make that all the time growing up, like that was a constant for me. Obviously, Papa's vegetable soup as well as
The
would be one I
nostalgia
would be all
feels.
over. So.
Yeah.
Also, sour
Yeah.
cream pound cake, yeah, for sure,
Give me some
100%.
of that. Absolutely. Give me some of that. And that's in addition to the chicken salad and the poppy seed chicken
Yeah,
casserole
all
and
the
all those
staples.
staples that you're already going to have there at Party Girl, 4205 St. John's Avenue, again in the Avondale Historic District of Jacksonville, Florida. Well, Ev, it is here. Training camp 2025. And I'm excited about football in general being back. In terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the prospects for the upcoming season, we're going to work through some different scenarios with this team as we anticipate them unfolding throughout the next month plus, both in Jacksonville and with those joint workouts with the Miami Dolphins coming up a little bit later. That should be interesting. But just your overall confidence level right now before we get a little bit into the minutia of this football team. Are you over the top optimistic? Are you cautiously optimistic? You know, a year ago I was borderline over the top, and I
Yeah,
was rewarded with 4-13 for
yeah.
that. So I'm kind of interested to hear where you're at as we get things going here in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, I got burned last year too. I think if we went back and, listened or watched to some of those old episodes from last off season, it would, probably make us feel even worse than the actual performance did because we were both high on, the Jags potential. And I am high on the Jags potential this year, but definitely going to say cautiously optimistic. There's still, just too many questions unanswered. Obviously in a off season which you change general manager, you change head coach, you're talking about, a lot of variance, a lot of unproven, verified kind of changes. So, I think it would be naive to be over the top optimistic, but there's also reasons to be optimistic too. So, like I definitely am excited, I'm excited too, but simultaneously I'm reserving judgment, until we get, pretty deep into the season.
Yeah, I'm not ready to be hurt again. In other
Yeah,
words,
same.
there's maybe some years where okay, I'm ready. Go ahead, do it again. I'm not. I'm not ready for last year again. And as you said, there's been an overhaul of this organization in terms of the GM level. Certainly the executive VP position with Tony Baselli in there now. Liam Cohen comes in, but as you said, even in all three of those positions, these are guys who haven't done it at those positions in the past. So it's reasonable to have some concerns about the trio, even moving into this thing. Hopefully it works out great, but I'm taking more of a wait and see approach like you. And look, it's not just last season either, is it? This goes back to December 2023. This
Yeah,
wasn't just the 4-13. This was December of 2023 that carried right over into last season. So this
Yeah.
isn't just a season that we're trying to work through here. This is a season plus, almost a season and a half.
Yeah, it's interesting with the Jaguars, when you compare it to the other, franchises around the NFL that have, historically not the I don't know, the resume that, champions do and all that stuff. Cause it's like with the Browns, it's like, oh, they just fall short over and over, but it's like in this like almost brutal way, whereas the Jags are typically just really bad. It doesn't have as much to do with like a lot of, like minutia, a lot of, bad luck or like this history of it. The Jaguars are just bad or they're good. And between last year and then the year before, with some of the like brutally close games, the missed opportunities, all that stuff, you do have to nip that in the bud at some point because, yeah, culturally you need to. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it really is like something that can, stick with you and stick with a roster until you're finally able to turn it over. Hopefully, with Liam Cohen coming in, a new energy and stuff, it's pretty quick of just, okay, this is something different. We're not just going to, continue to be not quite up to par.
You know what? Let's work through this football team a little bit, Ev, as we jump into training camp. And let's start on the defensive side. We'll start over there because if there was a major disappointment for the 2024 team, and look, you could point to the offense as well. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Oh yeah.
But defensively, it was a disaster. Man.
Yeah, it was
It
rough.
was tough to watch. And let's start up front now with the changes there, the new approach there, the optimism again that if nothing else, there's going to be personnel groupings that are sensible, alignments that are going to be sensible, guys
Yeah.
playing in positions where you really feel a lot more confident about their ability to produce. And, the defensive line, when you talk about really guys like Josh Hines Allen, we'll call him a defensive end here in this defense moving forward. Trayvon Walker, former number 1 overall pick. Davon Hamilton's played a lot of football inside. Eric Armstead, one of those guys that, again, the hope is even at the latter stages of his career, he can give you something, especially inside, as compared to too much of what we saw with him outside a year ago. Mason Smith is a second-year player. What do you think about this group in terms of optimism when you think the start of camp?
Well, I mean, really, I think it almost has to be improved compared to last year. I mean, just really with how much the defensive line underperformed last year, it feels like it has to be better, right? But that being said, obviously Trayvon Allen, we want to continue, or Trayvon Walker, excuse me, mixing him and JJ together. Uh, but obviously want to see him at least continue replicating that kind of 10 sack marker. You'd like to see him take an even further step forward, so that it feels like there's upside there. You would have to believe Josh Hines Allen is also going to have a much better season than he did last year. And same thing with Jordan Jefferson and Mason Smith. Those young guys, they should only get better. Really, everything seems to be trending upward, at least in terms of the key pieces. With guys like Davon Hamilton, that's a pretty big question mark. Eric Armstead, that's a pretty big question mark. But with the other 4 names I mentioned, lot of reason for to think that they're going to be, a considerable step up. And, I'm also curious just to see what, if Emmanuel Ogba, if Dwayne Smoot, if those guys get on the roster, what kind of role they have. I think probably you don't have both of those guys on the roster when the regular season comes around, probably just one. But, we know Dwayne Smoot can do stuff, in the right situation. And Emmanuel Ogba, while definitely faded from his kind of former, glory, if so to speak, still a guy with a, supreme amount of talent, a guy who can definitely play.
Linebacker, Foye Oluokun back, obviously at one of those spots. Then you get into some interesting potential scenarios with Devin Lloyd and Ventrell Miller. Where does Chad Muma fit into all this? Does he fit into all of this? Your guy, Jack Kaiser. That was the biggest news probably the last 4 or 5 days. Jack Kaiser has been signed to his
Finally.
rookie deal. You worried about that, I know, Ev. But just talk about those combinations, the potential for those. In the first week or so, what are you going to be interested to hear coming out of camp in terms of, who are the couple of guys that are right there at the forefront? Obviously, Foye, you expect to be one of those two, but
Yeah.
how that sort of fills out with him.
I think linebacker is going to be one of the most fun groups to watch over camp because it there's obviously with like Foyeside and then Devin and Ventrell, those are going to be your kind of locks. Like I mean, really, you should expect those guys to make the 53-man roster. But between Jalen McLeod, Jack Kaiser, and Chad Muma, that's going to be a serious position battle. I mean, you're thinking probably max two guys. Yeah, they're going to roll with five at least. But you're thinking, between those three names, two guys are going to go. If I'm Chad Muma, I mean, it is game time. Like you got to
Yeah.
be the best that you've been
Fork in the
basically since.
road
Yeah,
camp.
I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, you have to really show this staff, like, because the guys that drafted you aren't here. This is such a huge prove-it moment for them, and Kaiser's shown a lot of potential in this offseason. Same thing with McLeod. So I'm going to be excited to watch that. Do I have a feeling that Muma's still probably going to get on the roster? I think he will. I think he will make it, and they'll probably roll with
Mm.
McLeod as like a you know, may I don't know, but yeah, I think Muma and Kaiser are the guys, but I don't know. I think McLeod definitely has a chance to.
Yeah, you're going to need to be versatile, probably be able to play a couple of spots. That's never a bad thing. And then special teams value from this position to go along with safety, tight end, those type of spots on a football team with a 53-man roster. Critical when it comes down to the final breakdown of players for a game day type of situation. So we think about safety, the aforementioned safety spot, pretty interesting in its own right. You go out, you spend some legitimate cash on Eric Murray to bring him in. You would think he's one of those starters, Evan, going into this thing. But what about Caleb Ransall, the draft pick? Guy that they like a lot, obviously, this new regime. And what does that mean for guys like Darnell Savage and even Andrew Wingard and Antonio Johnson and some of those guys that are going to be in this mix as well?
Yeah, I would say that, those last three names you mentioned between Savage, Wingard, and Antonio Johnson, I think one of those guys is probably on the outs. I
Yeah.
think they're probably going to lean to the youth, like, with Caleb Ransall. And I just think that, especially if I'm Antonio Johnson, that's kind of feeling like the odd man out to me. I mean, yeah, another deal where I'm looking at Dewey Wingard as a opponent, an enemy a little bit over the next few weeks because yeah, like I mean I really don't see why you would keep all three, and Darnell Savage definitely seems to be the most experienced proven guy, even though he didn't exactly impress last year. But yeah, I mean that's another fun group. I actually think that the defensive side of this roster, there are positional battles all over it that
Mm-hmm.
are going to really really matter, and could see a lot of veterans actually on the out rather than just holding down a spot.
Yeah, if you're Antonio Johnson and it is Eric Murray and Caleb Ransall as the core base safeties, you better be able to win a job in like the dime, right?
Yeah,
You need to be able to be counted on as a dime specialist. Makes me wonder about Dewey a little bit too in that
yeah,
scenario. Although special teams, again, we know Wingard so valuable and has been in the past in that regard, and the experience, the dependability you have in him if you have an injury and you got to go with another safety, even if he isn't one of your top two, you still need that third safety. Daniel Thomas has played a lot of football. Special teams has been kind of his thing as well. Savage, it wasn't what the team wanted certainly a year ago, I would say, in his regard. But yeah, you're right. I think how that plays out, along with corner, which we're going to talk about right now too. I mean, obviously Tyson Campbell is going to be your starter at one spot, but you bring in Travis Hunter as a two-way guy and that number 2 overall selection. You got Monteric Brown back. You got Jerrion Jones back. Jordan Lewis comes in as, got to think he's going to be your nickel, right? He's going to be your slot
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah, for sure.
So as far as how the true outside spot opposite Tyson Campbell plays out, Brown, Jones, Hunter, how is he incorporated into all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I just based on what I've read and what I've kind of been paying attention to, I feel like they're going to absolutely let Jarian Jones play as much as he can prove, as much as he deserves out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
He, as for all intents and purposes, will be the accompanying starting corner to Tyson Campbell, at least to open up the season. That being said, Travis Hunter forces the issue. He forces the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least with training camp, though, Travis Hunter is it's going to be interesting to watch exactly how much they play him at corner. Just because Albert Breer brought this up the other day. I don't know if you saw this, but with the CBA, players can only spend so much time out
Mm-hmm.
there practicing.
Mm-hmm.
How much training can he actually get on both sides of the ball? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
the Jags, do you kind of split it or do you commit? Because I'd worry that in a very very important time in his development, if you're splitting time, is he going to be able to get up to speed, get to the
Mm-hmm.
level required before the season starts? So in that sense, I think they'll probably have Hunter obviously going out there taking snaps at camp on the defense, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's less than maybe what some people might anticipate.
Yeah, I don't think they're totally without options
Yeah,
once you get past Tyson Campbell. I think Buster Brown is a veteran that you probably are going to take a long look at because he
yeah,
has played a lot of football at corner in this league. I think Jarian Jones is a guy, as you said, you throw him out there and see exactly what he can give you. I still think and have felt all along that with Hunter, it's going to still be the S word, situational. Um,
yeah,
some situations that maybe you want him in there. And like I said, maybe on our last show, the best thing I like about Travis Hunter as a corner going into all this is if I lose a corner or two, almost like an
yeah,
emergency corner. If I lose a couple
yeah,
corners, and we've seen that happen with this team in the last couple of years, it wouldn't be ideal to have to lean probably too much on Travis Hunter at corner initially, but I've got him. I can do that with him. And I think as much as anything, the reason why we won't see Travis Hunter maybe as much at corner is because this whole thing starts with Trevor Lawrence. You're trying to get him to the level of what you compensated him at. And so to do that, you're going to need Travis Hunter to go along with some of the receivers that you've brought in the last 2 years. Obviously, you've done some nice things via the draft, and you hope with De'Ami Brown, you've done that even in free agency. But I think you're trying to buoy Trevor Lawrence as much as you can going into this season. He's got 4 or 5 coaches dedicated to him, for crying out
yeah,
loud, with this new staff. So that tells me a lot of the resources are going to be put into Trevor to try to make that contract look a lot more viable, I guess, as a way to put it moving forward. And speaking of the offense and speaking of quarterback, obviously Trevor, the starter. Nick Mullins
yeah.
comes in as what you expect to be the backup. But I guess where the number 3 is concerned, it could be at least a little bit interesting. And maybe how you go about that between the practice squad and the actual 53 man.
Yeah, between Wolford and Hennigan, it kind of just feels like you go with the experience there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, unless Hennigan, just shows you something. But I would anticipate Wolford as that, emergency QB kind of spot, that practice squad spot. And that's fine. I mean, the dude, at least has, played. I mean, I think he's even got a few
Mm-hmm.
starts to his name. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
and he
it's,
got experience with your GM and your head coach, right?
yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy. So I mean, but who knows? Maybe Hennigan's got something we don't know about, and he, brings out that kind of, cult following that we've had in the past with backup QBs. It always seems to happen in Jacksonville. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, what about the former Bishop Kenny product, by the way, Mr. John Wolford? What about running back? That to me may be the most intriguing spot of them all because we have
Yeah,
heard so much and talked so much during this offseason about essentially Liam Cohen was hired as much as anything to come in and elevate the play of Trevor Lawrence. But specifically, that was going to happen at least in large part to being able to run the football. And so you look at this running back situation. I felt like early on in the offseason, Travis Etienne would not be back. Some
yeah,
way, somehow, he would be moving on. Doesn't look like that's the case. Ev, it looks like
yeah.
ETN, it looks like Tank, it looks like Bashul Tootin, the draft pick out of Virginia Tech. And, I don't know if it's a full scale competition right now. Tootin has had some ball security issues. Tank has too. Travis, in terms of stylistically, if I think of more of a pounded run game, I don't really think of him as much. Explosiveness, certainly. So, is this a shared situation? Is how you view this going into camp, or one of these guys maybe steps forward as a kind of featured guy?
Well, just based on, seeing Cohen run an offense in the past, I would say it's all signs point towards a shared setup.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, let's say Tank Bigsby really kind of hits that, next level that, he's shown the capability of, reaching. I think, just the way that Cohen likes to run his offenses, he likes to have, some variance like you saw last year with Rashad White. Rashad White was having a really rough year, and he was still getting 5-6 touches a game, even at the end of the season. So I think ETN's going to get plenty of chances, and probably the majority of the workload out the gate. Because Cohen also shut down those trade rumors when they've popped up. He's been pretty vehemently consistent with saying he wants ETN on the roster and they're going to,
Mm-hmm.
get the most out of him. I think Tootin's role is what I'm most curious. He's got, a lot of like exciting aspects to his game. But like you said, if you're not trustworthy, especially as a rookie, then you can't get out there. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
can't have those kinds of mistakes. So, um, but yeah, I think it'll be split to start for sure. And really, I think, you only see ETN leave in like a mid-season trade scenario. And if that happens, then the Jaguars are probably doing pretty bad. They
Yeah,
probably
let me pose
2-6.
this to you right now. Between those three backs, when you talk about ETN, Bigsby, and Tootin, which of those three ends the upcoming season with the most carries of a Jacksonville Jaguar running back? If you had to pick right now, which of those three would be your choice for most carries in 2025?
I'm gonna go with Bigsby. I'm gonna go with Bixby. I'm gonna
Yeah.
believe that he ends up, just performing at a level that he starts getting, let's say it's like 60-30-10 between those
Hmm.
three guys, percentage of carries and snaps. Yeah, I think Bixby ends up being that guy by the end of the year. Also, there's just the potential of ETN getting injured.
Yeah.
I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
So I'm going less off of the initial plan and more of how I think the season's going to play out.
Yeah, I can't quit Tank either at this point. I just think stylistically of those three, I see him in this offense maybe
He,
being the better fit and being that guy that can take 12 to 15 carries a game and get you what you want, not
yeah,
feast or famine with Tank
yeah,
Bigsby. He's going to get you three, he's going to get you six, he's going to get you two, then he's going to get you eight, that type of thing. Again, if he's able to take care of the football, that's my biggest concern with Tank Bigsby. I think in terms of the backs they have on the roster right now and thinking about what this offense supposedly is going to want to establish itself as, I feel pretty good about Tank in that regard. Wide receiver position, Evan Brian Thomas Jr., obviously off the just big time rookie season with the Jags in
breakout.
2024. Travis Hunter coming in as the number 2 overall selection in the 2025 NFL draft. De'Ami Brown makes his way to Duval. Really, though, when you look at this list of receivers right now on this roster, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown, Parker Washington, those four, you feel pretty good about. But beyond those four, I guess it depends. They keep five, they keep six. This looks like a situation where there was a lot of Josh Cephas love a year ago, but this might actually be a better year for him to stick as compared to last year.
Yeah, no, I think, overall, like you said, that first four really, really strong. After that, you kind of, are starting to, scrape the bottom of the barrel. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just, where this roster level is at right now. Um, I think Cephas is definitely in that crew. I would be shocked whether they roll with five or six. I think you got to say he's the five spot. The six spot, if they decide to keep six, that's going to be very interesting because Austin Trammell, yeah, there's some potential there. There's some reason for optimism, but really Trenton Irwin is kind of the guy that you would think that they would go with. He's got a lot of special teams experience, just general experience. So that's kind of one to watch. Really that first four, I think it's pretty locked. Cephas could get jumped. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but like I said, I would be very surprised if he, wasn't on the roster at the end of camp.
Yeah, Cephas and Trammell were guys that had some history with the previous staff.
Right.
So whereas we're familiar with them, it's kind of a clean slate for guys like that when you
Yeah.
undergo this type of transition. So they don't have that sort of cachet maybe with this staff that they had with the previous staff. So in some
Yep.
ways, they're starting over in their own right. Tight end, boy, it looks a lot different, doesn't it? I mean, Britton
Yeah.
Strange obviously back, and he's moved up to that primary tight end spot with Evan Ingram moving on. But the Jags didn't just sit idle either in
Yeah.
free agency and in the offseason, made some interesting acquisitions. Again, familiarity between Cohen and, this front office that's in play now showed up in this position as well.
Yeah. No, really, I think this one's kind of, straightforward, right? Brenton Strange, Johnny Munt, Hunter Long. I think
Yeah.
that's probably your group. Unless, maybe somehow Quentin Morris, jumps Hunter Long, but definitely Johnny Munt's in there. And it's definitely not a top 10 group in the NFL or anything like that. But another thing with plenty of upside is Brenton Strange. Really, we saw the advancement and development we needed to see last year. If he continues on that trajectory, he ought to have a pretty impressive year this year.
Hmm.
It's exciting. That being said, that's why when you talk about earlier when we were talking about how optimistic can you be about the team as a whole, it's kind of these kinds of questions like you have with Brent Strange of how much further can he go. That you have to be cautious. You can't just go just blind optimism here.
Yeah, quality depth at that spot concerns me more than anything. It's strange you expect to be absolutely fine, but this is also a team that could be in 11 personnel quite a bit because of these wide receivers. If you want
Yeah,
Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown on the field together, you're going to have just one tight end out there, and that would almost certainly be Brenton Strange in most instances. But it also that sort of flies in the face of, well, we're going to try to pound the rock more, right?
yeah,
I mean, typically, if you're going to run it, you're going to be in 12. You're going to be in two tights a good bit
right.
of the time. You're not just going to be in three wides and try to do it from lighter sort of personnel groupings. So that will be fascinating to watch play out. All in on Brenton Strange. Worried a little bit about if you lose him, what does that do to kind of your versatility at the position? I mean, how are
Yeah,
teams going to defend you if you don't have Brenton Strange out there and you're kind of left with your second and third options? And of course, that's something just about every team is faced with,
of
it
course.
seems like, at that position. The offensive line, man, that's another fascinating area to
Yeah,
consider, scenarios to consider, because sounds like anyway, you're going to have some legit competition, not just at that left guard spot where Wyatt Milam You drafted him top 90, top 100 pick out of West Virginia, more of a left tackle at WVU, but this is a big dude that apparently they feel really good about on the interior to at least start his career. Ezra Cleveland's back at that spot. That could be a fun competition, Ev, over the next month
Yeah.
or so. And then, how do you really feel about the center position? Obviously, they feel good about Robert Hainsey. They didn't bring him in to
Yeah.
sit. But what about Anton Harrison at right tackle? And Chuma Adoga, how does that play out maybe as far as a competition on that right side too?
Yeah, I think this is probably the positional group that could have the most surprise, just based on the fact that there's so much new blood in it, and there's also plenty of question marks about the existing guys. Um, that being said, I think really, Walker Little and Anton Harrison definitely could lose starting jobs, but they're locks for the roster. There's no world in which they are
No.
somehow on the outside looking in. And then same thing with the veteran guys like Ezra Cleveland. But with Milam, you're like, yeah, it seems like he's going to be an understudy for McCarry. But at the same time, if Ezra Cleveland was going to give up the job to anybody else, I think Milam, he's the front runner for that. And Cole Van Lannon is another interesting name here. He signed a franchise tender, so you're thinking for sure he's on the roster. I mean, there's no world where he doesn't really make it after that. But Jonah Monheim, that's a question mark.
Yeah.
We've always been kind of fond of Cooper Hodges, but kind of hard seeing him make the roster this year. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
seems
yeah,
like a
they've
practice
already,
squad situation.
yeah, I think they've already made the decision on Cooper, but sure, depth in terms of you talk about your seven guys and what does this mean for Luke Fortner? Because typically you've got a guy that can swing from guard to center. So,
Yeah,
if Hainsey's your slam dunk starter, which we all think he is at center, you can't really swing Fortner to guard. So, a guy like Patrick McCarry can probably do that for you. Bring him in from the Ravens. You're not just asking McCarry to be a significant upgrade at right guard. You're asking him to sort of represent this cultural and identity
yeah,
switch that you're hoping to go through, in which you're physical and you control things at the point of attack. I don't think there's any doubt Walker Little's the starter at left tackle, but sure, when you look at the one guard spot, right tackle, Anton Harrison should be the starter at right tackle. I
yeah,
think maybe what's being the question posed to him right now is how much does this mean to you, right? And we know the games that coaches and teams will play with players that previously there was a lot invested into, and there certainly was with Harrison as a first round pick a couple years back, but it's a big preseason for him in terms of not just this season, but maybe his NFL career in general. So that's the offensive side of the ball. We really don't need to go too much into specialists because we know that's the absolute strength of this football team. I mean,
yeah,
that's where all the Pro Bowlers are. With Logan
yeah,
Cook and Cam Little is gonna be all pro. I saw he
yeah.
kicked like a 78 yarder the other day in off-season work. So no real reason, I guess, to get into specials. I guess you could talk special teams in terms of return candidates, Parker Washington, some of those guys.
I think Parker's probably the guy until he gives them reason to think otherwise. But I mean, there is, I'd be curious. Duami Brown's a pretty shifty guy.
Yeah.
Is he probably too valuable to be doing any type of kick return or punt return stuff with? Yeah. Parker Washington kind of slides in every aspect of that role, including financially,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of investment. But yeah, who knows? Even Travis Hunter. I mean, I don't know if no, I'm joking.
I would like to see him back there. Don't get me wrong.
Just to see it, yeah, just to see what
Yeah.
happens. But
Yeah.
no, I think it's Parker Washington's job to lose. I
Yeah.
think it's his until further notice.
Well, there you go. That's the camp scenarios that we're working through in advance of the coming days, weeks, and a little more than a month, I guess. Ev, you fired up already for that Hall of Fame game? You already itching for that, or does it take a
Yeah,
little more time to get you kind of fully lathered for this
No,
preseason
I
action.
really am getting very excited about football season coming back around. It, really, with how depressing this Atlanta Braves season has been. I sometimes, in years past when the Braves have been really good, I haven't been in a rush
Yeah,
to, you know, get back
been
to football
rough, dude.
season, but
Whoa.
right now it's there's not a
Uh,
whole lot to really enjoy.
yeah,
So
I think I'm temporarily at least converting to a Brewers fan. Maybe I'm going to jump on
they're
that
fun. The
bandwagon.
Brewers are
Yeah,
fun right now. They're
they seem
cool.
like a fun team, and they've never really been able to get over the hump. So if the
And we've
Braves are
got
going
new
to kind of,
connections.
yeah,
We've got new
we got Bruce City connections now,
yeah.
so we
No, I
technically
gotta
qualify.
we gotta go up to what will always be Miller Park, not
Oh,
whatever it's
it's
called now.
I don't
It's
care what they
always gonna
call
be
it now.
Miller Park.
Yeah.
Uh yeah,
I've ordered a Coors at Miller Park, and then I ordered a Budweiser at Coors Field.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if either one of those worked out
I
that great.
I'm trying to think of what did I drink the last time I was at Bush Stadium as well? I can't remember. But
Keystone Light,
yeah, there you go. Keystone and
uh,
Bush. Probably was, honestly. Probably might have been a natty.
only the
Um,
good
but
stuff.
yeah, no, the Brewers and the Tigers, they're the fun teams in baseball right now. So, and
They are.
the Cubs are good. That's always fun. So,
We need the
um,
Cubs and Brewers in the
yeah,
postseason. Just an
yeah,
hour and a half away from each other, and
yeah,
just catch the Amtrak series. You can
yeah.
do that pretty easy with
But
those.
no,
But
very excited for football and both the Jags and college football right around the corner
college
too.
football
So
coming up, man. Week 1 in college football is going to be
nuts.
just tremendous. You're going to have Bama, Florida State, and
Yeah,
Tallahassee. You're going to have Clemson, LSU in Clemson, Death Valley East. You're
yeah.
going to have Texas at Ohio State on that opening Saturday. That's going to be fun. Fun Labor Day weekend.
You also got some weird games like Nebraska goes on the road to Cincinnati. I
Yeah,
think that's an interesting one. Just I love those types of games too. I love the just random like this game's not going to
yeah.
matter in the grand scheme of it, but it's just Nebraska at Cincinnati. I don't know why that has
Let's
a
do
nice
it.
ring to it.
Notre Dame's going to Arkansas in
Yeah,
September.
that's pretty tight. Also, Mississippi State playing on the road in Hattiesburg, Southern
Yeah,
Miss.
come
That's gonna
get
be
it.
sick. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hattiesburg will be
Rocking.
amazing. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, it will. That Raising Canes, here in Duval, boy, they're freaking out. We got a Raising Canes. You had
it's
people
good,
camping
man.
out, spending the night. They go, I'm like, does anybody around here go west of like Tallahassee? Raising
No,
Canes, I could almost see it for In and Out coming this far over. But Raising Canes is kind of a regional thing. It's not
yeah.
like they originated in Portland and finally made it down here. But
No,
people
it's
are fired
true,
up.
but it's the way that because for whatever reason, however they've approached the expansion of the market,
Uh,
is it has been a pretty big fu to me over the course of my life. I'm very lucky that I went to the University of Alabama and they had a Raising Cane's on campus while I was
yes,
there. But then after giving
roll
me,
tide.
4 years of
Yeah,
unfiltered access, living in Jacksonville and Birmingham, neither
there's none
city
in
has had
Birmingham
Raising
yet.
Cane's.
There's none in
Birmingham doesn't
Birmingham.
have it.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
Well, you probably
Now,
remember. I mean, traveling from Tuscaloosa to New Orleans or Baton Rouge, that Hattiesburg Raising Canes,
yeah,
that
absolutely.
was
They
perfect for
move.
that drive. It was like halfway, and they had one of the Shipley's donuts there too, which was an
Oh
OG.
yeah.
So
Oh
Hattiesburg, shout
no.
out to
Hey,
Hattiesburg.
the roads are worse in Mississippi, but the stops
Yeah,
are better than Alabama's. I'll say
PGA
that.
Tour golfer Davis Riley,
Yeah,
Hattiesburg, Mississippi
Hattiesburg native. Yeah.
native. Yeah, we've gotten way into Hattiesburg here, but
Yeah, I know. It's a
that's what
special
we're here
place.
for. That's what we're here for. Yeah, we're with their tourism and development
Yeah, it's our newest
people. Yeah,
sponsor. We've
Chamber of
been,
Commerce.
in the
Check them
market.
out. All
Uh,
right, man. Well,
yeah,
it's been a lot of fun. It's hot here. I know it's hot in
yeah, it's hot here
Birmingham too,
too.
but we've gotten a nice little cool off this afternoon anyway. Got some rainy weather that came through. It's cloudy right now, man. It was like 100 though before that.
Yeah.
at like
Yeah.
1 o'clock.
No,
Sorry, buddy.
we finally, Birmingham generally gets off the hook a little bit when it comes to the weather compared to Tuscaloosa or other parts of the state, but finally we are now hitting, I'm seeing three digits when I open my,
Oof.
turn on my car, and
That's
it's
just the way it
rough,
is
but
this time of year, man.
you know,
Mid
just
July through August, it's
it's more, you know
brutal.
what? It's more rough on my wallet than it is anything else. I can deal with the
AC,
heat, but paying
yeah,
for the AC is, man,
yeah,
brutal.
yeah.
Um,
It's the AC man loves it right now.
oh yeah, this
People
is
are out left and right. AC services. This is when the AC really gets stressed. This is when you find out if like your
yeah, what's it made of?
capacitor is fully functional. Because if it isn't, it's going out.
Yep,
You know, new
no doubt.
systems going in everywhere. All right, Ev. It was a lot of fun, my man. We'll catch up again real soon with some updates from training camp 2025 as the Jacksonville Jaguars. Year 31, hopefully a lot more memorable than that big year 30 was in
Yeah,
2024. Ev, we'll do it again soon.
sounds good. See y'all then.
For Ev, I'm Trav. Thanks again for tuning in right here on Reier on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell. That way you're alerted to our content as it drops right here on Reier on YouTube. And if you'd give us a thumbs up, a like, that would help us out tremendously
Yep.
as well. Until next time, so long, everybody.